So today, finally, after several days of polishing and grinding and adjusting valves and whatnot, time to put it all back together. Now this is actually the 5th video in a series that actually, I guess we could have made one giant long video that probably nobody would watch anyway. It's too long, but anyway, to make a point, we've tried to break it up into bite-sized pieces that would be fun to watch. However, that first video, actually the second video, the one of adjusting the valves, really ran, and I wanted to keep it all on one video, but the rest of these we try to keep reasonable. So now the final step, we have to get this put together and get out into the tundra where it's about 15 degrees, and I've got so much ice on my pond I could go ice fishing. Now the first step today, and we were really hoping it would be a lot warmer out there, because we've used grinding compound on this, we want to make sure these parts are immaculately clean. I've got to do some assembly. I've got to put the filter back in here, the labyrinth box. The outside's really not that important. What's important is the inside. And I don't want to have, now here's what happens if you're not real careful, or you don't realize what you're doing here. Here's what can really happen. You've touched this grinding compound with your fingers. You've got it all in here from holding apart. Now what happens, all that compound's in there, you put it back on the engine, tighten it down, the oil starts slushing it through the, well, you can picture. It's nothing good's gonna happen. So step one is, and it's step one for me, if these parts were any dirtier, I would take them out and soak them in some diesel fuel, but they're really not that dirty because I've cleaned them several times already. But I'm gonna let this sit. Step one, let it sit while I have my coffee. I'll take it over to the sink, I'll fire up the steam cleaner, get this as immaculately clean as I can before I assemble it. Now this steam cleaner has proven to be so good in so many ways, and I've found several good ways to use it, cleaning the car, cleaning wheels, but it's really good for cleaning parts. Now these parts still have the fingerprints and things that might have grinding compound on it. So for sure, I see stuff jumping out of here already. Because number one, it's 200 degrees, a little over 200, and it's under tremendous pressure. And we have that little brush on the end. I'm not too concerned with the outside. When it's all done, I'll just run a polishing cloth over the outside. It's the inside. I want to have that inside as clean as possible. And it's the inside of this, of course. And I don't care how long this takes, or I have to do it in several cycles, down in the labyrinth box. And when I'm done, hopefully that'll be immaculately clean. And anything that still won't come out, I'll have to use a little diesel fuel on. But this is the important part, that we got this all degreased and all of the compound out of there. Now, and I'm putting this labyrinth back together with blue Loctite, because here's the problem. If this piece comes loose, this is where the cam chain, if it got sloppy, would rub against. So what would happen is, if that falls down into the engine, nothing good can happen. I can't imagine anything good happening. Now I have to make sure this is the side that the filter goes on. That's the oil separator, so that what they want with the system is they want the air to be drawn up in here, and any droplets of oil that are in it are going to get trapped in that filter. Now it's really funny, you really can get a lot of these parts in the wrong way. Now, I want to grease these surfaces, and this was, again, I think it was Luciano's trick, but it's not a critical thing, and boy, none of us are getting paid for it. But the grease on this, next time I take this apart, which this bike has 44,000 now, and I've seen many GSs that have 80 and 90,000. So, and this engine doesn't burn a drop of oil, and it's a very, very nice engine. I guess I should do the whole thing, because there's in the labyrinth there, it's going to be a problem. But anyway, even little things like this, getting this all set up right, the air comes in there, comes in there, and I will put a little blue Loctite on these bolts for one simple reason. Here's the problem. These bolts are very hard to get to without removing a gas tank and taking this whole thing apart. So I don't want anything loosening up in the middle here. I want that to be nice and solid. And here's where having that bolt map really pays off, because I've got the exact screw back in the exact hole. And I want these, again, whoops, these are the typical screws that if you over tighten them, they strip very easily. So the blue Loctite, and I'm doing them in a cross pattern. And actually the factory manual suggests that you start, when you tighten the screws, tighten from the inside out. Well, I guess we're going to go by the factory manual, since they know a little bit more than I do. But then everybody does. Okay, so these are socking up real nice. And the trick is with all of this stuff is not to tighten one screw and then do the other ones. We're pretty much ready to go out into the tundra where it's really cold. By the way, one really neat thing, I like to pass on stuff that I think is really cool. There's a video on YouTube about restoring a Packard V12. A 12 cylinder, maybe it's not a V, it's a 12. But whatever it is, a Packard, there's a guy restoring old Packard engines. When I watched the workmanship and the craftsmanship, I guess you could just look up Packard engine restoration. Holy mackerel, do they put some effort into that. Wow, I thought I cleaned things to where they were ridiculous. It's worth watching. Now, up to this point, we've got a lot of hours into this job. And I think of, the alternative would be you adjust the valves and just put the dirty part right back on. Well, I don't know. Again, but watching that guy restore the Packard engine, holy mackerel. Workmanship and craftsmanship. Just unbelievable. You might be wondering, well, how cold can it possibly be? Well, the week that I did this, and it's taken the better part of a week, I have been chopping ice. Oh my God, has it been cold. Now when I'm working out in the tundra, this is my best friend, is that quartz heater. My new best friend. So with a little carb cleaner on the end of a rag, I want to clean this surface because I want to put a little gasket sealer in that bottom area, not in the top, just in the bottom. I want that to be as clean as possible. And this is the easy part now, just getting this part back in because we know where these screws are. And because of the bolt map, we know where every bolt goes. And what I'll do is start in the middle, work my way out, hand tighten it, put some grease on the gasket, number one, and then get this, just gradually tighten them little by little by little from the middle out. Now, a couple little tricky things, and I don't exactly know why this is, but it's always easier to get the valve cover in from this side, not the other side. You would think it would be the opposite. It's just easier to get in from this side, and this gasket is not a symmetrical gasket. If you flip it over, it kind of looks like most of the holes line up, but they all don't because there's two pins in the corner. And those pins, if they don't line up, you could have all kinds of issues that the gasket would be squashed out. Now see, I'm looking around the whole perimeter of the gasket and it looks like everything's good. Because now I'm going to take the bolt map and one by one put the exact bolt that went in the exact location right back where it was. Now I have one side of the bolts in. They're all basically just hand tight. Now before I even put a wrench on these bolts, I want to do all the ones on the other side. So basically all the bolts will be through the gasket. The reason is if I pinch that gasket or if I can't get one of the bolts in, I want to be able to move this around just a little bit. I don't want it, here's what I'm saying not to do, and I've done it, that's how I know. Don't tighten one side down and then go to put the bolts in the other side. Get all the bolts started and hand tight. Now any grease that oozes out, and I've checked that see, I can see the gasket in all locations. So if I saw all of a sudden there was a gap, I would think that, and this gasket is difficult to get on. The grease helps hold it in place. But after all the work I went through, I don't want to have the grease dripping down onto the engine. Now what I'll probably do is run this a couple of times, heat cycle it, take it for a ride, and then retorque all the bolts starting from the inside working out. Now before I assemble this back, I took the speedometer cable, pulled it out, put grease on it. This is very easy to do at this point. Grease the gear, and that'll be ready to reinstall. And anytime I have the speedometer cable off, of course, a couple of drops of oil. And now what'll happen is, just take a minute or so, as I twist that, that'll go back down, right down the cable. Now the next thing to come up with is a piece of new hose. This is pretty rock solid. Got to go through our bucket of hose and check the vacuum line, the fuel line, and this piece of hose. And if they're, and that's always what's nice about having a spare bike, because we needed 4 screws, and we just go off and take them off just like a Christmas tree, taking the ornaments off the Christmas tree. Okay, the next thing, the vacuum line is on. I want to hook up the plug, clean up those plug ends, get the plugs on. There was a couple of funny things I never realized. The camera batteries go bad in about 2 minutes, and I've got 2 of them out here, of course. And so a couple of these scenes got cut off at the pass, but I wanted to save everything. It's really cold out here. It's amazing how cold it is. But it is such a good feeling. I polished up the wires. I'm ready to put the tank and all the bodywork back on. Oh man, I can't wait to get this all put together. This has been one heck of a week. But this is one heck of a bike. I have really enjoyed owning this since the day it was new. Well, it's the most satisfying thing, putting the last couple of parts on the bike, especially in this cold weather, and knowing that it's going to be nice and warm in the house. Good feeling to have that done. Well, it looks like we got our idle back. It looks like everything is the way it should be. We won't know till we take a real ride, of course. But it's going to be good to get out of this cold. So I hope you enjoyed sharing this little adventure and learn something from it, maybe. And most of all, enjoy every minute you have with your motorcycle. This one has been a good one. And no matter what kind of bike you ride, no matter what part of motorcycling you enjoy, hey, I happen to enjoy it all. And thanks for watching.